Welcome aboard, everybody. We'll go ahead and call, remind everybody, including the chair here, to silence your cell phones. We seem to have forgotten that over the years based on some meetings I've been in lately. We'll go ahead and call this meeting. This is a Sales Tax Subcommittee of the House Ways and Means Committee. We have two items on the agenda today. We're going to go to the item that we have for action first, because I think we can dispense with that. The author has let us know that he is running a bit late. Given the chairman of the committee is the second signer on the bill, if he doesn't object, I'm going to move to that and ask the committee. We're in a position to move forward on House Resolution 66. If all recalls, we had the first hearing on this. This is a resolution that approves the governor's executive orders with the fuel tax that saved Georgians literally hundreds of millions of dollars as the price of fuel ran up. I'll be silent to what may have caused that, but this is the resolution that we need to bring before the House to ratify that executive order. It has not changed since the first hearing. We are in a position to move forward on that. I don't think Revenue has any additional comments to add. Revenue has nothing further to add. So if there's no comments from the committee, if there are no questions, we're in a position to take a motion. I have a motion and a second that House Resolution 66, this is LC 432565-EC, do pass. Is there discussion under the topic? Discussion? Any discussion on the item? None. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, no. That moves to full committee with a do pass recommendation. House Resolution 66. Somebody can let the author know that he doesn't have to rush. As I understand, he was caught in traffic. We'll move now to a hearing on House Bill 170. You have that on your device, House Bill 170. And we're working off the new version, right? 2666S. Is that right, Chairman Carpenter?
That's correct. That is correct. Thank you, Chairman.
You have two versions on your electronic device here, but we're working on off of LC 432666S. And with that, Chairman Carpenter, tell us about your proposition.
Yep, thank you very much. So this is some stuff that we have talked in the past. It's a continuation of what Brett Harrell did before he left this body. After working on Marketplace Facilitator, then he was touching base on digital downloads. And this basically would tax digital downloads, whether it's books, whether it's music, whether it's apps on your phone that you're buying, purchasing things. I think, it's always been important to me, and I think other members of this body, that we have parity in the tax system. And currently, as it sits, our mom and pop stores in the state of Georgia are at a 7, depending on your jurisdiction, a 7 to 8% disadvantage versus what's happening online. So if I go to Barnes & Noble and I buy a book, I pay sales tax on that book, that brick and mortar store. But if I download that book and do the same action of reading that book, I don't pay tax currently in the state of Georgia. It's just updating our tax code. It's getting us to a point where obviously there's parity in the system. And we're kind of late to the game. There's only a few handful of states left in the U.S. that have sales tax that don't tax digital downloads. I'll go through the bill a little bit. There's a lot of words in here that get really confusing, but basically it's saying that anything that you do on your phone, on your computer, that you utilize, that you purchase, should be taxable. There are obviously some exemption in this bill that would exempt streaming from it, because there's another issue for another day, but we tax cable, streaming, satellite, all different, and I think that needs to be addressed in a bill later on in a few years. But so we kept them out of it to make sure that we didn't put them at a disadvantage with their competitors. Obviously, on line 70, it kind of goes through some other digital goods that would be taxable: artwork, photographs, periodicals, newspapers, magazines, video games, audio greeting cards, etc. There is a part in this bill that would exclude pre-written commercial software. That was a big issue for industry. because a lot of companies use a lot of expensive software, obviously fintech, et cetera, that I think is used in their commercial business, so they should not be taxed on it. So without that, I'll be glad to answer any questions and go through the bill. It is a big bill, but basically the gist of it is there's two exemptions, business software and streaming, and it's just getting us into parity on our tax code. And with that, I'll let you look over it, and if you have any questions.
Questions of the gentleman? Any questions? Yes, sir. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to ask the chairman over there, understanding that maybe the streaming should be looked at another day, and I'm sure you can explain it, but I would need a better explanation why that the business software would be exempted, but yet every ordinary citizen would have to pay tax on the books and things that they download. I don't understand why would that be that they would have a preference over, John Q. Public out there.
I think the issue, right, is that they're using this in the commercial use of it for their businesses, right? So they're buying this really expensive software, or they're subscribing to this really expensive software, and then using it to make the state of Georgia better, have jobs, et cetera. And if you start taxing that, you're gonna, it'll really put a burden on our businesses.
Well, isn't it true that somebody that downloads a book for their child in school, they're doing something for the betterment of the state of Georgia?
Well, you could argue that dollar tax that they're paying on the books versus some business having to pay $20 million in taxes might be of concern. But I understand what you're saying.
I'm just asking.
I understand the frustration.
I've always had a problem with this taxing these digital things anyway, because it is an additional tax. And I know we always use the argument of the mom and pop stores, but they all do this too. I don't know of any mom and pop store that I can think of that doesn't have some kind of a presence on the internet and sells things through.
Sure. But I guess the argument would be, if I've got a brick and mortar store in your community and I'm hiring people and I'm paying property taxes in your community and I'm at a 7% disadvantage of Amazon, that's something. If they're downloading the book, or if I'm, I think that's an issue that I have heartburn with. Obviously, I understand the concern on the commercial exemption.
We have another. I'm going to kind of let
fine.
you guys get together if I can.
I'm through. Thank you.
And no, I appreciate the Chairman Parsons' question. I want to direct this question to you and make it a question because this is the first hearing. I want to be careful, just from my personal standpoint. Or if we're changing tax policy, my understanding right now is commercial software, if it's delivered as a TPP, is taxed. Is that not true? I don't know if we
have to.
Revenue.
There'll be people here that'll.
Revenue. Anybody wants? Commissioner. Yeah. So I want to be real careful, and to follow up on Chairman Parsons' question, I want to be careful we're not changing tax policy in this bill. If tangible personal property that is computer software, if they deliver tapes, books, electronic means in a TPP form, that is currently taxed. Is that true, Commissioner? So under this bill, if they change the method of delivery, they would avoid tax. So I think that conversation needs to be had, because your representation was that we're just capturing stuff that you paid tax on the other way, now you're going to pay it.
Yeah.
In this case, you paid tax on it, now you're not.
I got you.
So let's do that. We had a couple more questions. Number 7, is that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Williamson. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you, in your question, answered part of my question. Getting back to the discussion about the parity among the states, we said one of the few states that are not already doing this are, in fact, those other states taxing these business computer programs.
That I do not know.
We need to research
Yeah, we need to,
that,
absolutely.
because
and I'm sure somebody will be talking to the bill shortly on this.
Obviously, as the facilitator bill proved, these are otherwise goods that were previously being taxed in storefronts. Now that they're in a digital format, most states are taxing that same product or service. It's just being delivered in a different way, with the intention, this body's intention seems to be to use any additional revenues to help drive down the income tax.
I would agree with that. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I think, once again, the point's taken, but I just asked the author, I think the idea is that business inputs are not taxed, but
that's
that
correct.
we're capturing what, has always been kind of a retail type item as well.
That's
So,
correct.
It further expansion, I guess, of what, Marketplace Facilitator did several years ago. And it's a step that other states have certainly, most all have taken in some shape, form, or fashion. So,
Yep.
but yeah, I think the point's taken. We need to make sure that we're looking at how that policy is applied.
See, I pressed the wrong button. Now I see I'm back. I have no further questions from the committee. We'll you can stay there if you'd like, Chairman Carpenter, and we'll go to microphone number next over here. Justin Pauley, Georgia School Board Association. If you could, and I'm gonna let you push the button on that mic and make sure. Well,
Looks like it's. Is it on? Good morning, Chairman, committee members. My name's Justin Pauley. I'm with the Georgia School Boards Association, and we just wanted to take this opportunity to express our support for the bill, and we appreciate Chairman for bringing it forward. So that's it. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming up. See no questions. Dante Handel from the Association of the County Commission, ACCG.
Morning, everyone. My name is Dante Handel with ACCG. I just want to come up here and express ACCG's support of Chairman Carpenter and House Bill 170. Echo what he said about modernizing the sales tax code and trying to reach parity between the online items and the brick and mortar stores.
I see no questions. That's the bottom of our sign-up sheet for this bill. I always like to give everybody the opportunity. Is there anyone that wishes to speak in support, opposition to, or not sure? Any further speakers on the item? This is the first hearing on House Bill 170. Any further speakers? Any further questions of the author from the subcommittee, and we'll conclude this and get on to the next subcommittee. I know you mentioned that you had an addition that you might want to make in the bill.
I mean, I think we talked shortly before
we don't have to talk about it anymore today. You can just make it.
Make
the change when we have it back. I don't mean to cut you off, but I know we're against hard stops here in the morning because we have session.
Yes, sir.
So if you do that, and we'll have you back when Chairman Blackman's ready. And
that'll work, and we should have a fiscal note by then as well. Yep. We've been waiting on that as well.
Absolutely. Well, if there's no further question on this bill, I thank you, Chairman Carpenter, for bringing the measure. That concludes our agenda on the Sales Tax Subcommittee. If there's no further business before the subcommittee, we'll adjourn it without objection. I see none. We are adjourned without objection.
What? Yeah, you're good. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call the Public Policy and Finance Committee to order. And we're going to move right along with, we're going to start with, I believe, probably the most important bill that Frank and the author of the bill is over here probably catching up on right now. And as soon as they finish, we're going to bring to you House Bill 95, which, of course, is our Internal Revenue Code update. So I'm going to start with you with the second hearing, which is eligible for a vote, and I certainly hope we can get it out of this committee today. Chairman Knight, you have the floor on House Bill 95.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had in our In our first hearing, we went over, and we do have Department of Revenue here, but in short, this is one of the shortest and least as far as a fiscal impact on the state that I've seen. I've been carrying this bill for probably 15 years or better. You know, Department of Revenue went over some of the individual provisions, but if there's questions, I'm sure we can address those. If not, I'll remind the committee that the importance of getting this bill out quickly because we have Georgia taxpayers that are trying to file their income tax returns. And so the quicker we get this through this General Assembly in this process, that will have to flow through, obviously be signed into law, and then again making sure that this flows through to the tax preparers or to the actually software companies that do this, so that these our taxpayers can timely file those returns this year. Okay, and it's unfortunate, but again, we don't get these changes in in the federal code until end of the year and sometimes after the year, and that's why we're always pushed for time to reconcile our Georgia tax code with the changes that were made at the federal level. So, but with that, I'd ask the committee's favorable consideration on this very probably one of the smallest IRC updates that I've seen since I've been here.
That's a good thing. Austin, would you like to add something from the department?
Nothing too much more. We've got the cavalry here today for this very important bill. So I'm joined by Commissioner Frank O'Connell, who we are very excited is our full-time commissioner, no longer just interim. Amy Oneacre was here for the sales tax policy hearing. She leads that division. And then Kelsey Finn and Jarder Gal from our income tax division. If y'all have any questions for us of IRC, we are all ears.
Members of the committee. Mr. Chairman.
Chairman, I will apologize to the new commissioner. I should have recognized that when he was appointed as our full-time commissioner. Y'all that don't know, he has you've been over there for a couple of years, right? 28 maybe. 20 years. All right, I was promoting him maybe, but he's done a great job for us over there. And my apologies to you, Commissioner. That's a great appointment for the governor, and congratulations on that.
Any other questions of committee? I want to thank the department as well as before I ask for a recommendation for an amazing amount of receptiveness to your entire department. For no matter whenever we call, whenever we've got problems, we find solutions in a hurry. So I want to congratulate you as well, Frank, and to the entire department for your ability to get things done. So with that, is there a motion on the floor to move the IRC update? Got a move and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. We are on to the full committee. Thank you, Chairman Knight. This is the second hearing on House Bill 36. Chairman Martin, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, this is the same bill. We passed this, and I would ask Mr. Travis, I think this is the exact format. If a date had to change, it might have changed. This is the exact bill we passed last year. This is to give taxpayers that have personal property access to a hearing officer on complex property. Right now, they go to the Board of Equalization on a complex things. They end up in Superior Court. Our Superior Courts are clogged. This is it's taxpayer friendly. It's actually county friendly as well because it saves them at the court level. So I would just ask the subcommittee's indulgence and move this forward. There's been some conversations with ACCG about the number. 200,000, and I'm still, willing to talk to them. We're trying to get some more information about what the workload would be, but we'd like to move forward, as the chairman said, just in the exact form for last year at the time.
Members of committee, questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I might add, this enables them to pick a public hearing officer. It does not require them. They could still go to the BOE if the taxpayer likes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will accept a recommendation on, did you have a question?
mention where the dollar amount that you derived, where that?
Yeah, well, I mean, the dollar amount we derived at 200,000 from last year. ACCG wanted to have conversations about increasing that, which I'm open to. I thought we were moving it forward at 200,000, but so it would be exactly as we did last year. But I'm still open to the conversation of doing that right size to make the workload as low as possible. We're trying to ascertain, and I did get some information from DOR about what an account was to make sure that that we right size the amounts. Still willing to have those conversations.
Anything else? Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to take a recommendation on this bill, which will in front of you is LC 432489, and the floor is open for recommendation from the committee. We've got a move. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor of moving the bill will say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? We are on to full committee, Mr. Chairman. And now we will move forward with two hearings, if you will. And I think we'll move forward with you, Representative Smith, if you'll take Chairman Smith. If you'll take the chair at the end, and we're going to hear House Bill 311, just to refresh everybody's memory. This was the one that was a constitutional amendment last year that passed, and this is now the enabling legislation, if I'm correct. If you'll explain.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and also just a big general thank you to all the members of Ways and Means. Last year I appealed to the general wisdom of the committee as a whole, and your input and direction on House Resolution 594 as a constitutional amendment number 2 received 92% of the vote in the general election, and so I can't thank you enough for that. And we're here today to look at what is really the general bill, which is the enactment of policy for this bill. I want to first of all thank Blake Travis, he's a magician. I want to also thank Ryan Bowersox and Dante Handel for the help with local governments. This bill, and the purpose of this bill, is to enable our local governments to have the option to act on destroyed property during a natural disaster. This is a new code section, so is it proper for me just to quickly walk through the bill? I want to make sure that the committee understands these are definitions that are new to the code section. So disaster area is described on lines 14 through 16, and it's based on the Robert T. Stafford Disaster Relief Emergency Assisting Act of the U.S. government. So there's a standard in the very beginning that has to be applied to this process. And then we get on page 2, and we're going to use the words eligible damaged tax parcel, and then we're also going to use major damaged words or destroyed words. And we have to find the tax parcel as the area that contains a building located within the nationally declared disaster area. And so this page pretty much goes through ways to define and use that. Governing authority is defined as the appropriate county, consolidated government, municipality, or governing body of the appropriate county or independent boards of education. This is an important term and word, and I wanted to make sure that this was available to every single county in our state. And I'm on line 30, and it defines local emergency management director, because this is the person charged with determining all of this information that your local governments will need to make their decision. And then it goes on, it gives a slight exception from emergency management director to our local municipalities. They have the option to declare their own. That's on lines 36 through 39. And then the emphasis on lines 41, 42 is again and again and again that this is optional. There is no requirement. It is totally optional. I'm looking at Blake over there. You can do a timeout if I get it wrong, okay? And then we jump to the next page, And we have already defined the local emergency management director, but we have a guide for him to follow, which is the primer, so to speak, Emergency Management Agency Preliminary Damage Assessment Guide. And so that is the document used. We asked this emergency manager to go through the damaged area, and then we asked that he give a damage report. And then this report is to your tax commissioner, and he will use that to create information for our local governments to review. Any action by a local government will be through a resolution. And then when we get to page 4, we really get into the specifics of what they can do. And I want to pause here for a moment and tell you that I might be the author of this bill. I am not the voice of this bill. The voice in this bill really is through the efforts of all of our local governments and their leadership. So this whole process, I felt all along, would succeed if it worked for our local governments. So our language from on page 4 all the way down talks about the ways they felt like they could use these guidelines to apply these property tax reliefs if they wanted to. Some are credits, some are with millage rate. It just changes as you go and read down the page. And this is the input in particular that they had on this bill. So I can move over now to page 5, and it talks about the appeal process that needs to be in every bill. But then one of the keys to me is when we get to section 2, lines 111, 12, and 13. And I'm looking at some of the members of the General Assembly who are here today. And already this year, parts of our state have had natural disasters. And so I got questions. Okay, you passed it last year. How does it apply and how does it work if a natural disaster that would fit this description has already occurred? And so I'm going to just read this part of the language. So section 2, this act shall become effective upon its approval by the governor or upon its becoming law without such approval, and shall be applicable to the property tax assessments issued on or after April the 1st, 2023. So those of you who are familiar with tax policy, and again, to Lead Council, thank you for finding a way to address that concern. And with that, again, I'm the author of the bill. I'm not the voice of the bill. And sitting back behind me are some very knowledgeable people who might be better, in a better position to answer some specific questions. And so that's Ryan Bowersox, that is Dante Handel, and I hope there's someone there also from the school board. So, Mr. Chair, I don't know your policy, but I would be very comfortable if they too could answer some questions.
You know what, and I'll ask the committee in just a minute. Whenever this idea came up and you brought it up, just after the bill passed overwhelmingly by the public, my area, strangely enough, was hit and was clobbered. Quite honestly, nothing was left but the slab on most of these houses, and it was extremely difficult. Every now and then we get a bill that affects folks on their daily life, and this was one of those. So thank you for bringing it forward, and thank you for not dropping the ball and working through it. So members of committee, and I know there's probably going to be some others that might want to chime in, ACCG, GMA, and others. Members of committee, questions on the bill? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
There.
To my longtime friend here in General Assembly, and this is just a question so I kind of understand, but you had mentioned this, but if you can clarify for me, this language after on page 4, see, after establishing a resolution, the local government has to
Yes.
have a resolution stating the amount, I think it is. But then this language 75 through on down through here, it appears there's some different ways of doing it. I guess I'm reading it quickly. I'm just kind of unclear on what that means right there. 75 through, I guess, maybe on down to 92, something like that.
And thank you for that question. That really is, in a way, the heart of the bill. How do they use this option if they choose to use the option? And so it goes to what happens to the property owner and how they might receive some relief.
Okay.
And so one is millage rate, one is credited, and it is just a process. You know, you've got damaged property and you've got destroyed property. Your local governments will have the option to apply it what works best for them. This is
Okay.
to not bankrupt your local government, so to speak. We looked at it when my county got hit with the tornadoes in 2000. I called it the midnight tornado. We were totally wiped up and unprepared for all of this. And what made me want to take the ball and run with it was my one of my local government officials told to me in October. He said, I wish we could target particular areas of our county to give them relief, the ones that were damaged or destroyed, the buildings, the properties. And he says, I have no way to do that. I've either got to issue a reduction in the millage rate, or if I issue a credit, however I do it, I have to do it to everybody. And in that way, it is not physically responsible of a local government to do that. So this is language that our local governments have worked with League Council on to say, how do you want to do a millage rate reduction? Or if you don't want to do a millage rate reduction, do you want to credit flat dollar amount to this particular area? Or do you, how do you, what are the belts and suspenders you need to have these options that you need to have? And so the whole point of this bill too is it's not intended to be a lodestone around your local governments. If a school board can't do it, they don't have to participate. If the county can do it, but the city can't, they don't have to participate. The whole structure of the bill is intended to be optional to the property owner, and we went with buildings destroyed, and I might have to look to League Council to help me with that language, but it's strategic. Your local governments, with the gratuity clause in our Constitution, can't pick and choose winners and losers. And so this bill makes sure that it goes to what I call the Bible of how to determine it, coming from the federal government, and what do we look at, and how do we apply it. It is a totally new concept.
Okay, fair enough.
And thank the Lord it's a general bill, so we can go back and change it next year if it's not right, or the year after, or whatever.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Clint, would you come up to that microphone right there and give us a little county-wide illumination?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Clint Mueller with ACCG. Just real quickly, as far as the process goes, just to follow up on your question, Chairman Parsons. So the property tax cycle works on an annual basis. And unfortunately, we would love to give everybody property tax relief on their actual property tax bill. But depending on when the disaster occurs, that might not be possible. As you all know, property tax bills, we've got to first get permission from the Department of Revenue to send out the bills. But those typically start going out sometime September, October time frame, and then they're due at the end of the year. So if the disaster occurs probably, September later, there's no way you can actually put it on the bill because the bill's too far gone by that point in time. So that's what we're going to have to do, a refund. So basically they'll have to pay their bill, but then we'll issue them a refund for the tax savings. First is if the disaster occurs early in the year, we can actually go ahead and deduct it on their bill so they don't have to pay it up front. So that's the difference.
Thank you for the clarification. Chairman Knight, how many houses a couple of weeks ago were you got a little experience with this?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think being neighbors with Chairman Smith, our counties have experienced, some horrific tornadoes. And like Chairman Smith's county and city of Newnan, 2 years ago?
Yes.
As y'all know, Griffin, Spalding County was hit very, very hard. I don't know the exact number. I know it's well over 100, 150. It could be even higher. Homes, businesses that were basically destroyed. So very, very important here. These folks, their lives were destroyed, and you know, the idea of getting a tax, you know, having to pay property tax on something that no longer exists is, it certainly is not helping the situation. Very important piece of legislation.
Thank you, Chairman. Other members want to ask questions about the bill? Anybody else in the audience? Mr. Chairman, do you have anything? This is a hearing only.
Did you mention what your referendum, I mean, what the referendum passed?
Yes, and thanks to the collective wisdom of the committee, it got 92% of the vote, which
I'm
is
sorry, I
unbelievable.
missed that.
So
Doesn't hurt to say that one again, though. Thank you, Chair Lady.
I'll keep saying that.
Like I say, this is my 26th year, and this is one of those things that helps a whole lot of people whenever there's no other options out there. And I just appreciate you bringing the bill, and you can bet we're going to have another second hearing on this one pretty quick if the chairman agrees, and we'll see if we can't get that to full committee. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee.
308. We're going to do now House Bill 308 hearing. Chairman Newton, I need to turn you on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, committee. Following up on some of the needs across Georgia workforce has been something that's been brought up by both the governor, the speaker, as something that's crucial, and in particular with a growing population and often an aging population, healthcare workforce across the state's been important. House Bill 308 is a continuation. It changes the expiration date of a program that this committee started back in 2019 of community-based faculty preceptors. That's a mouthful of words, but what it really addresses is the fact that our teaching hospitals, whether they're in Macon or Savannah, Augusta or Atlanta, they're great for learning the most critical parts and tertiary care, we'd call it, the specialties, but they're not always great for learning what day-to-day family medicine or general practice or general surgery is about. So community-based faculty members are key for our medical students, future doctors, our future PAs, and our future nurse practitioners to have a place to go to where they can see what day-to-day practice is like in multiple specialties, whether it's neurology, urology, anesthesiology, or family medicine, general surgery, obstetrics. So this is a program that's been working real well since 2019. It's currently due to expire at the end of this year, 2023. It does have an annual fiscal impact of $2.2 million. I think with over 1,500 preceptors and thousands of rotations that have been done, it's done two things. It's allowed our students to get the education they need, but it's also gotten a lot of them out into our rural areas, actually in high needs areas. Our rural areas have been very gracious in inviting these students to come do 1 month rotations. This faculty preceptor tax credit, this bill does two things. It does extend the expiration date of this program from 2023 to 2028, so it does extend it. It also streamlines it a little bit. Right now, the current program has a maximum of 10 rotations a year. The first 3 are at half rate, which is $500. The next 7 are at $1,000. If you're training, if it's a nurse practitioner or PA training, it's $375 for the first 3, and then $750 for the remaining up to 10. This program would just make it a flat $1,000 for the 10 for physicians who participate in this program, $750 for nurse practitioners and PAs who train their counterparts in this program. I think it's been an excellent program. The amount is another $239,000 if the same number continue to do it that did in 2021. So it's a small increase that will be required in the budget. I think the program is one that really I could tell you is priceless for learning how to be a practicing physician in a community, once again outside of a highly specialized academic health center. So it's accomplished that goal greatly, and I think our medical schools could probably all attest in our nurse practitioner programs and our PA programs. This bill also does add dentistry. It won't be near as large as any of the other 3, but it does give an opportunity for dentists to train dental students in the same way we allow medical students to go train with physicians in the community. I'd be glad to answer any questions if there are any on the program or the adjustments.
members of the committee, questions?
We do have others that may speak to it.
Yes, sir.
No, if y'all are going to speak, I'd just reserve any questions or comments. So if the author's done and the chair's okay, go ahead and hear what they have to say.
The questions, Mr. Chairman Smith?
I just like to say for rural Georgia, thank you. I'm from a county of about 34,000 people, and this is a great bill.
Well, we have found, I mean, the reports I've gotten have been that the students who do this, they not only learn how to practice medicine, they also learn what a joy it can be to live in a lower cost area of Georgia, but with some special attributes that they may have never seen if they stayed in, once again, Augusta, Atlanta, Macon, or Savannah, which are some of our bigger teaching hospitals now in Moultrie, I guess, well, in Columbus. But I mean, when they go outside of those areas for some of these practices, they learn more than just healthcare. But that's the main thing we want them to learn, is how to do a great job. And this is a token, I would say, to a busy physician practice or multi-physician practice. It's important. I won't say that the tax credit is not important and doesn't pique some interest, which I think has been the result of changing it from a tax deduction to a tax credit 4 years ago. I think that's been it has gotten a lot of interest, and I've certainly encouraged my counterparts. I've never gotten this and will probably never be eligible to get it with my part-time work here and other places, but it is something I think has been great in the training, and I look forward to hearing from those who are more familiar with it than me. If the chairman.
Chairman Williams.
I wait.
Okay. Let's go ahead, if there's no other members of the committee, and we'll start with Faye Fulton with the Georgia Academy of Family Physicians. Why don't you, either one? Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll just speak very briefly. So I represent the Georgia Academy of Family Physicians. I want to thank Chairman Newton for bringing this bill back. It has been invaluable, just as you mentioned, for our rural family physicians. I want to note that the Georgia Academy is very supportive of adding the dentist, because there aren't enough rural community dentists, and that the physicians that take part in this program aren't being paid from any other source, and it's Georgia students, and that's really important. For my doctors wanted to convey that to the committee. So thank you so much for your consideration.
Let's see, Darlene, is it Cornegie?
Denise.
Good. Whichever.
Cornegie, right?
Sorry. You have the floor.
I'm Denise Cornegie, and I'm the director of the statewide AHEC, and we administer this program on behalf of the state. And I have to tell you that the original idea for this was that our Georgia programs that you guys all fund, the medical schools, the nursing programs, they were competing with offshore and out-of-state schools to get these rotation sites. And those programs can pay $700 to $3,000 to $5,000 for a month for a student to go. And our programs couldn't afford that, and the state didn't want to get into the business of paying. So this was seen as a novel way of encouraging preceptors to take Georgia students from Georgia programs, and they can't receive compensation from any other source. And it's been highly effective. And I have to tell you one small story. Family medicine is the department I'm in, and when we do clerkships at the hospital, you're standing 7 deep in a hallway to watch something happen. I had a family medicine student who did a clerkship down in Tifton, and he came back and he said, I helped with an amputation. That would never happen in a tertiary hospital because the surgeons would be doing it. So it's a great learning experience. We have data. We have tons of data, as much data as you want. I do have one thing that I think might be interesting for all of you. This is a matrix which shows, if y'all can help me. Let's see. By county, who all received credits, how many credits they received by discipline. So you can see if the people in your community are participating. It is optional. You don't have to participate in this. But what happens is every program in the state submits all of its rotation data to us. So we have a complete list of everybody who's doing rotations or who's supporting these. And we send a letter in January telling them that they have accrued these many rotations, which equals X number of credits. And then they have to sign an attestation that they meet all the eligibility requirements in order to claim the credit. And then we work with the Department of Revenue to look at not only how many we certified that occurred, but how many actually claimed it. So we have those data as well, which I think is important. And I know all of you are going straight to your county, so if you have any question, I'll be glad to answer them. But this bill is just real important. I also should say we were the first state in the nation to do this. And since we did it, 17 other states are trying to do it. In fact, I just got a call yesterday from Connecticut, of all places, who said, how'd y'all do this? And we want to do this. So it's kind of nice that other people are looking at us and saying, hey, this is pretty cool, as a way to address these issues.
Thank you, Denise. Members of committee, questions of the presenter? Oh, there we go. Representative Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the information. Do we track any of the data as to whether they do end up staying in the rural communities? Do we keep up with any of that data, or is there a way to do that, or no?
Yes, in part. From the AHEC perspective, one of the things that we do is we track people from the first time we meet them. So oftentimes, it might have been a middle school health careers camp, and we track them through what program they get into, where they do rotations, and where they go into practice. So we do look at those things. We do know, according to data by people smarter than me, that the more that these students do rotations in certain types of locations, you increase the likelihood of them practicing there. And so there's some magic numbers out there. So we're really trying to get students to do as many rotations as humanly possible off the medical campuses. That's why we have all these regional campuses going up around the state. And that's why they're so important.
Thank you.
Other members? Yes, sir. Chairman Knight.
Obviously, as this committee and this the General Assembly, especially the House, is well aware of our issues, especially as it goes to rural physicians. So obviously, good bill, and to my friend here, but can you, we keep stressing the rural part. So are we really targeting in on the rural part here from
No.
a point of view of, we keep seeing that, but by the numbers, where are we seeing the largest participation of this? Are we really dialing into the rural areas where we really do want folks to go out and do?
Well, I will tell you, I'm going to answer it a couple of ways.
Okay.
The AHEC program that I run also provides all the housing for rotations across the state. And our housing is all in rural areas. And so when a program is looking to place students, the first thing they're going to want is housing. So we don't provide housing in Atlanta, for example.
Okay.
Now, the truth is that these students have to do these rotations. So yes, we do have a lot happening in Savannah, in Atlanta, in Albany, if you consider that urban. But the push is to get them further out. And frankly, the need is such that we have to get them further out. So we do allow this. A provider can practice anywhere in the state and get this if they're taking the students. Mm-hmm. What we have found in for example, the Atlanta area, is we have what's called puppy mills, and that you'll have a preceptor who has 20 rotations that he's completed. And that's why we cap it at 10. We don't want this to be something where people are just taking in students to make money. So we really do focus our efforts at recruiting the rural physicians and rural APRN and PAs, soon to be dentists. But we do allow people in the cities to participate as well because we need them.
Chairman Williamson.
Just a quick follow-up on that, because that was a great question about rural, how effective it is in rural communities. And I guess I'm going to go back to the author of the bill. Are we open-minded about maybe bumping up the credit in rural Georgia if as we alluded to, oftentimes, let me put it this way. When I was a young bachelor in Monroe, Georgia, when the new teachers came to town, we'd have our Rotary Club would have a new teachers barbecue, and all the eligible bachelors were there to meet the new teachers. So,
we need to
I'm
do
not being
more of that.
sexist about that.
I'm glad he
But
prefaced that.
so a lot of these young people that would come to teach in Walton County ended up living in Walton County, raising families there, and that's the way one way I'd be very supportive of maybe considering increasing that amount of the dollar spend for rural areas to get them more likely to go to the rural areas, if that makes sense.
I think between the housing and that is an excellent question or response. I will tell you, this does have guardrails around it, as they said, as Dr. Cornegay said. You can't receive compensation from anybody else, but also you can't transfer them to anybody else. You have to earn income and pay taxes in Georgia for this to work, and you can't trade them for a future year. So they're not transferable. They're not carried over. They can't apply to previous years. So there are some guardrails around it, but I think that's really an excellent thought that I'm glad to explore with the committee.
And if the author would indulge me by not mentioning to my wife that I
The
made all those
bachelor.
comments.
It was clearly prefaced with bachelor days.
Isn't it true that I'd recommend that this is?
It is streamed, that's right.
Well, I often say that we should fund Match.com for every student going out on a rural rotation and see what we can do with the Love Connections.
Representative Kelly?
Thank you. I just had another question as you brought up the puppy mill scenario. Because you said some are doing more than 10.
Can I answer? She was talking about some of the offshore schools or out-of-state schools had gotten to where they were sending 3, 4, and even 6 students at one time walking around the hospital with a general surgeon. And it became more of a business than a
teaching.
Kind of teaching and take you under your wing. I will say the 10 a year is good because you start getting good at it after a while. You learn when you can bring an obstetrics student in with you on a rotation. And Dr. Cornelius is exactly right. You're with medical residents and everyone that's in a hospital that's eager to get involved in any procedure or any interesting case. Medical students are at the end of the line, but when they do these rotations, they're right next to the attending the whole time. And you can learn a lot faster, and it's really hands-on.
I guess
there's nobody doing 20 under this program.
Well, so that was kind of my question. It looked like previously we limited it to no more than 10, but it looks like now it just says 1,000 for each. And so that's
No,
what
we're still
No,
at
no,
10.
it's still, if you
so
read
that's-
further down in the
okay.
bill, it does
Where's that
say
at?
that, you're capped at 10.
We didn't
got
change
it.
the
Okay.
capped at 10.
All right, that's where it got me confused. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
I think that when we spoke that there was some data that, backed up the change there with regard to, the bump over, the number. Can you explain that again for us, Denise?
You mean what it would look like if we didn't have those, what was called incentive structure?
Yes.
Formerly, the chairman of this committee, Chairman Powell, wanted to have an incentive structure in here. He wanted to try that to see if it created anything different. And his idea was that we would pay less for the first 3 rotations, and then from 4 through 10, you'd get the full amount. Well, the reality is it's not changed that. People are going to do what they're going to do in some ways. But it's also administratively very complicated. And I should note, the Medical College of Georgia finds this so valuable that they pick up all the administrative cost for every program in the state. And so we don't go to the state asking for administrative costs to run this program. And I think that shows you how important it is. And I know Margie Miller is here and may speak to this as well. But the juice isn't worth the squeeze, if you know what I mean. So if like for 2021, if we had paid the flat out 1,000 per rotation and $750 per rotation, it would have been about $232,000 additional in credits. So we don't feel like the incentive structure is necessary, and it unnecessarily complicates it, and our preceptors don't like it because they get very confused about how much they're due and how much they've earned. So we just recommend streamlining that.
Thank you. I know we've got other questions. Can you hold that one? Margie Miller, why don't you come on up, and Denise, you can sit there as well, so that we've got 5 minutes until rules, and I want to make sure that everybody's heard on this one.
Margie Miller on behalf of Augusta University, which is the home of the Medical College of Georgia, the Dental College of Georgia. We're also the flagship nursing school, and we also have the College of Allied Health, where our physician assistants are educated. This is a great tool for us, and as Denise mentioned, early on when this was put in code, the dean of the of the medical college said, yes, this is very much something we will cover the cost to administer. Just as the Chairman Newton said, it's just one of many tools that we use to encourage people to help us within our teaching mission to be these clinical faculty, and has also been discussed today. It's very important for us to have those rural physicians, because just as was mentioned, if you get somebody into your community, you see a way of life, you see options that you wouldn't see just living within an academic medical center all the time. And just as Chairman Williamson said, when you're in these areas, you have opportunities to see, different things and be exposed in different ways. Another important point is our students talk to each other, obviously, about their clinical rotations, and they talk about their experiences within these communities and how the clinical faculty treat them while they're there and what they're exposed to. So that is just another huge piece of this, is that sharing, and then it drives others back into those communities. So we're very supportive of this bill.
Chairman Williamson, we got about another minute. You want to shoot that question?
Yeah, I can just ask him offline. That's fine.
Okay. Members of the committee, do we have anything else before we break for rules?
One comment.
Yes, sir.
I think, and again, purpose of the original question, where are we seeing the most action? I think this committee has a great feeling towards the program, but I also think that we want to look at, again, making sure we're incentivizing the rural piece. So I hope that we can work with the author to look at maybe a tiered type system, okay, so that we can make sure we're really putting in the incentives that we need to make sure we're sending these future physicians, or at least exposing them to our rural areas where there's so much need.
Thank you to the author. Thank you, Denise, Margie, and members, we are adjourned.